Hello, today we're going to be going over the Law of the Lid and General Maximus. This is Law 1 of the 21 Laws of Leadership. Gladiator is one of my favorite movies. I believe it does a fantastic job of combining good leadership lessons within the context of a thrilling drama. We'll be focusing on Maximus and how the Law of the Lid applies to him. The Law of the Lid. Leadership ability is that which determines a person's level of effectiveness. This is from the 21 Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. And basically what this means is we're only going to rise to the level of our leadership ability. So for businesses, a business owner typically is defined by the amount of revenue that they have. And so a lot of business owners get to a certain point, whether it's $300,000 a year, $2 million a year, $10 million a year, where their revenue flatlines. And that's basically because that's their law of the lid. That's how many people they can manage, both customers and employee-wise. And they kind of just bounce up against that lid, just like we see here. This guy here, his lid is right here. And so to raise that lid, we need to grow ourselves and become better people. For things to get better for you, you have to get better. Quote by Jim Rohn. So we have Maximus, and he is the general of Rome. So basically, Rome is the greatest superpower, and he's kind of like the general of the greatest army, facing off against the barbarians, which are the Gauls. Which is modern day France/Germany. You can tell he's extremely competent, and he's also well loved and respected by his men. He's just basically one of the most powerful men in the world, probably most powerful except for maybe Maximus, Marcus Aurelius, who's the emperor of Rome at that time. He raised himself up to this position. He didn't get the position by being rich or being born into a powerful family. It seems like he did have some money because he has his own land and he has his wife and kids and farmland. But it doesn't sound like that's why he was appointed to the position. It seems like he's been doing this, I think, for about 12 years. And he's worked his way up through the ranks, and he's earned this position based on competency, and he wasn't just given it. So we have the scene where basically Maximus gets arrested by Commodus. He's finished off the war. Marcus Aurelius is dying. Marcus Aurelius tells him that he wants him to take over Rome and kind of make it what it once was, restore it to republic. It's become too corrupt. And that you can't trust Commodus. And so Commodus actually comes to Maximus and says, hey, you mean it's like, can I trust you? Can I rely on you? And Maximus kind of shoos him off, but he doesn't really think this through and realize that Commodus has done this with all the guards and is basically, kind of built his position to figure out who his friends are and who his enemies are and bribed whoever he need to bribe. So Commodus kills off Marcus Aurelius, and then he has Maximus arrested, and Maximus is betrayed by his own generals, his own men, which is probably pretty eye-opening. But he wasn't necessarily acute to the 48 laws of power and the corruption that can happen in political environments. So we find out that Commodus is very competent in the area of backstabbing and politics and stuff like that, and this is not an area that Maximus is well versed in. So through the next part of this movie, we go through the trials and tribulations. Maximus is able to escape being slaughtered or being executed by the army. He runs back to try and save his family, but he finds that they're already dead and the land's been burned and stuff like that. And he ends up getting sold into slavery and ends up having to fight as a gladiator. So this is the trials and tribulations part of it. It's again kind of coming back to the law of the lid. So he was top general of Rome and stuff like that. But now that he's kind of dropped back down, he still has this high lid that kind of allows him to rise up and get back to kind of where he was. So he kind of sets out the goal of, eventually killing Commodus and restoring Rome to the Republic, as Marcus Aurelius had wanted. And so he kind of has this backslide in power and authority, but because his lid is so high, because he's so competent, he has all these skills, he has all these abilities, leadership abilities and stuff like that, he's quickly able to rise through the ranks of the gladiator nature and kind of at the end of the movie being able to fight directly with Commodus. So this is kind of the difference between internal power and external power. Many people believe that if they had power or money that they would be great. I believe these things only amplify who you are, like your existing traits, existing abilities and stuff like that. So another Jim Rohn quote, if you wish to be ruler over many, be faithful when the amounts are small. And this is kind of a reinterpretation of one of the biblical quotes. So Maximus had tremendous internal power. And this is how he was able to rise up when everything he had was taken away. The difference between Maximus and Commodus. There are many differences between these characters, but to me the primary difference is the cause they fight for. Maximus spent his life fighting for the greatness of Rome. Kind of when him and Marcus Aurelius were talking, Maximus was saying that he looks at Rome as like this shining beacon of light. It's democracy and freedom and all these kind of things, and that's what he's trying. That's why he's fighting for Rome, is to kind of share that greatness, to share that light with the world. So it's not about him. It's not about, oh, I'm Maximus and I'm the greatest person in the world and everybody should bow down to me. He has this greater vision of the world that he's fighting for, whereas Commodus is focused on enshrining his own greatness. Like we see a fight scene with him and he's fighting against like 8 different soldiers at once, but it's all orchestrated. So it's like, you mean he knows exactly where everybody's going to attack at the right time. And it's not saying that he's not a competent swordsman, but it's the whole reason for that endeavor is to show how great Commodus is. And the idea that Maximus would ever kind of do a drill like that to me seems completely ridiculous. It's like he'd be much more focused on teamwork and building like the discipline and all these kind of things of like what's actually going to make the army great. Whereas Commodus is much more about like, oh, what makes me look amazing. So this difference is kind of a difference that Jim Collins had brought up in his book Good to Great, which is another one of my favorites. He talks about level 4 leaders versus level 5 leaders. So I'm not sure I'd fully put Commodus in a level 4 leader, but basically level 4 leaders are great leaders, but they're focused primarily on their own ambitions, their own greatness and stuff like that. So one of the stories he gives is Lee Iacocca, who was the CEO of Chrysler, that he comes in, he turns around Chrysler and gets it profitable and all these kind of things. But then in the second half of his tenure, it was all about him. It was about like, oh yeah, I'm this great person. I turned around Chrysler. And he's writing books about himself. He's going on like the media tours. He's even thinking about running for president, I believe. So it's all about like me, how great I am. Whereas what they found with level 5 leaders is that these leaders weren't focused on themselves. What they were focused on was the lasting greatness of the company that they're working for. So what level 4 leaders would just typically be like, I'm great, I'm intelligent, I'm just going to get all these followers around me who are just going to go do all the things I tell them to do. Whereas level 5 leaders, what they do is they try to get the best people around them. Who's the best person to be CEO? Who's the best person to be VP of marketing? Who's the best person to be chief financial officer? So it's like, let's go find the best players we possibly can and then just kind of create an environment where they can just do their best work. And so what they kind of found in the Good to Great is that it was actually very difficult. Like these level 5 leaders a lot of times tend to be very awkward, and they didn't want the interviews. They didn't want their face on the front page of the magazine cover. They didn't want to have this big puff piece put about them. What they wanted to talk about was the company, and they wanted to talk about like how amazing their employees were and stuff like that. So the attention and the focus wasn't on them. So the question I have is, what is your cause? What is your cause or motivation that extends beyond yourself? Because to be that kind of level 5 leader, and I think to kind of find a lot of meaning and fulfillment in life, you want to look beyond yourself and kind of see how you can add to something greater than yourself. So personally, my kind of idea is to make the world a better place. Like that's my core value that I've kind of gotten from Dave Logan and Evan Pagan. And I believe that the best way to make the world a better place is that we need more great leaders. It's like a lot of people think that's like, oh, we need to get the right politicians in power and we need to have the right money allocated to the right causes. I don't really think that those things are going to change much. Like if we had politicians who are better leaders, I think that would certainly help. But a lot of these kind of external top-down kind of things to me aren't really what changes things. I think true change has to come from the bottom up, and a lot of it comes from kind of effective leadership for yourself and then effectively leading other people and teaching them to become great leaders as well. So Maximus again believed that Rome was the shining beacon of freedom, and that's a cause that he was willing to give his life for. I'm sure he would have much preferred to be at home for those 12 years with his wife and kids, but he had this greater purpose, this greater mission in his life that he was committed to, and that's what pushed him forward. So another big thing I'd kind of hasten to is that we want to make sure we start small with the things that we do. I believe there's a lot of causes that are going on right now that people are like, they want to give their lives to, but there's not a whole lot of like climate change is one of them to me. And so there's people that are like gluing their hands to the roads to stop fossil fuel, but it's like, one, they probably drove to get to this place to protest, and then two, they're like using like petroleum based glue to actually glue their hand to the road to do these kind of things. And I don't think these are really changes that kind of work from a top, like from a bottom up perspective. I much prefer kind of like Greg Judy, the regenerative rancher kind of perspective of like, okay, let's figure out how to make a profitable beef kind of ranching operation for myself. And so it's like leasing land, and he even was custom grazing cattle. So it's like you have like a low cost for renting the land, leasing the land, and then you're actually getting paid for other people basically raising their cattle, growing their cattle on that land. So you have a lot less of the risk. And so how he basically used that to start his own ranching business, where he'd slowly build up his own herd, and now he's got his own strong herd, but still, again, a lot of leased land, but he also owns a lot of his land. So he started small and he disciplined himself, seeing what's actually working and what actually doesn't work. And so I think that's very important, is you start small, see what works, see what doesn't, and then move up from there. And it's, again, it's like, if you wish to be the ruler over many, be faithful when the amounts are small. So that's my guess. Is like, we don't necessarily have insight into where Maximus started out, but my assumption would be is that he started out very competently and he did whatever job he was put into the best way he could, and then worked his way up from there. So another question I have is, how are you improving yourself? So what are you doing to improve yourself? How are you going to raise your lid? What things are you going to learn that you didn't learn? So a lot of business owners, there's skills that they have to learn to get past their lid. So a lot of the business owners I've seen, it's that they've gotten to where they've gotten their position because they're putting out fires, is how I'd put it. Is that they're good at kind of juggling all the balls, spinning all the plates. But to get to the next level, what you have to do is build systems. Like, it's kind of like the McDonaldizing your business. So you have to make sure that everything's like clearly thought out, everything's as fast and simple as possible, and you kind of built this system from the ground up. And so if you want to go from just having one or two locations to having 10 or 100 or 1,000 locations, you need to have systems in place, and you need to have effective management. You have to know how to hire effective people. And that's a very different skill set than most business owners have, because most business owners are very flexible and they're able to change and adapt, and that's what got them into business and was able to succeed in the beginning. But they need to learn a different set of skills that's not natural for them and not intuitive for them. So that's why most of them don't do it, because it doesn't feel good and it's not very particularly fun for them. But that's what they would need to do if they want to rise to the next level. So to me, some of the main skills that I think everybody should be learning is teamwork and leadership. These are skills that are universally applicable, because for the most part, we all work with other people. It's like, you mean when we go and buy food at the grocery store, at a restaurant, all these kinds of things, we're a completely interconnected group of people. And some people say you can go live off the grid and stuff like that. For the most part, that doesn't really make sense for most people. So I think we need to learn how to effectively work with other people through the context of teamwork and leadership. And the only way to ensure that tomorrow gets better is for you to get better. Another Jim Rohn quote. So conclusion. Who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. Ralph Waldo Emerson. So in this graph we see here is kind of, you mean, your personal level of effectiveness. It's like, okay, so how effective am I at doing what I'm doing? But then we see it multiplies when you have leadership ability. As you increase your leadership ability, it makes your personal effectiveness that much better. So you could be a 10 on personal effectiveness and be right here, but if you only have a 1 of leadership ability, you just can't make that much influence. So what we want to do is first, become personally effective and do things the right way ourselves, but then we want to learn leadership ability as well and make it so that we can multiply our efforts through others. So Maximus is an extremely powerful man with incredible character, and he was an incredible leader. So this multiplied his personal effectiveness. Whereas Commodus, had a lot of skills himself, but he wasn't a particularly good leader, and he ruled with fear and authoritarian power. This can work for a while, but eventually it falls apart. Thanks for watching.